don't know what you're doing Thanksgiving morning at 7:50, but I'm planning on going over to San Jose and running in the Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. I hope they have it in person this year. I ran it before virtually, but when they hold it, it is the largest turkey trot in the nation. There are 28,000 people there on Thanksgiving morning, and they do their best to make it fun. This is why I do it. I mean, for one thing, it's a fundraiser for Second Harvest Food Bank, but it's also just plain fun. Like, they have a costume contest for all the runners who enter, and people really do dress up. Of course, there are turkeys. I've also seen poultry chased by a chef. Indiana Jones was there one year, and the winner, the first year I ran, was a spine made up of a whole chiropractor's office staff. Now, how many of these costumed runners do you think you see at the finish line? None. Because the beginning of a race, well, it's like a party. The end of a race, well, it's like a race. Starting a race is super fun, right? Full of potential. The middle of the race, the end of the race, a little bit harder. And that's a lot like the life of faith. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We've been studying faith for several weeks here. It's been great. We've had fun. Now, how do we keep that enthusiasm? Well, right after Hebrews chapter 11, in the first couple of verses of Hebrews 12, the writer gives us 4 keys to finishing strong in the race of faith. And these are all things that I've had to apply in my own life in many ways, in my marriage, in raising kids, in my ministry, and many, many more. First, the author says, run encouraged. Run encouraged. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, wait, what cloud of witnesses? The phrase he uses there is the same phrase used in ancient Greek for a crowd of people watching from a stadium. Well, of course, he's referring to the people that we just met in Hebrews chapter 11. Up in the stadium, the stands, there's Abraham, there's Moses, there's David, there's Sarah, there's Rahab, and they're all watching you and me run our race of faith. And they're cheering us on. And not just them. Think of everybody else who's gone to heaven before you that you know. I think of my dad, my mom, my stepdad, maybe your mom, maybe your dad, maybe another loved one, and they are cheering you on. Now, somebody told me, Rene, if those people can all see me, they're booing because I keep falling. Listen. The great cloud of witnesses I just described, they know all about what it means to fall. Think of what we have learned about Abraham, Jacob, Moses, David, Rahab. They all know personally what it means to tumble and then to get a hand from God's grace, to get back up into the race. That's why they're here. They made it in the Hebrews 11 list of heroes of faith, even though they fell too. So they are up there cheering you on when you fall. Now, not just them. Also, I encourage you to get personal encouragement too. Plug into positive people. Don't do it alone. And you can find those people at church, small groups, volunteer settings. This has been something that we've let slide a little bit, I think, in recent months, as so many things have been virtual. It is so important to run encouraged, to get plugged back in. And then number 2, run light. Run light. You know, I've been running now for a few years. I ran track and cross country in high school, and I still run occasionally just for fun. And I have learned some things like getting shirts and shorts that are like these. These are made for running, and they're made out of like space-age fabric or something because they are light as a feather. And it makes a huge difference, believe it or not, when you're running a race, to wear clothes that are actually made for running. Because when you're running like a half marathon or a 10K, a regular shirt starts to feel like chain mail. It is just too heavy. So wear stuff like this instead. Now, the writer of the Hebrews says this, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. He says there, get rid of 2 things. First, everything that hinders. That's not necessarily sin. It's not necessarily something that's morally wrong. It's just whatever is weighing you down, whatever's hindering you. You know, nobody runs a marathon wearing a backpack. So what's weighing you down in your race of faith? Maybe worry is weighing you down. Guilt, bitterness, unforgiveness, or maybe it's just a distraction, like spending hours doom scrolling on Facebook or binge watching too much TV. He says everything that hinders has got to go. Get rid of the excess baggage. And then he says, and the sin which so easily entangles. Now, in the original Greek, the writer uses a definite article, the sin, not just sin generically, the specific sin that entangles you. What is it for you? It's got to go. Get into a 12-step group, get some support, read some books, get rid of that if you want to be able to finish strong. So run encouraged, run light, and then number 3, run steady. Run steady. The rest of verse 1, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Run steady means pace yourself. Think of what you need to do to stay spiritually healthy for the long run. Don't be a workaholic. For Jesus, you got to run steady and slow. Take a Sabbath. Take breaks. Take vacations. You know, one of the most common mistakes that beginning runners make is they go too hard. They run too long and they run too fast. You've got to run at a slow and steady pace if you want to finish the race. Finally, run focused. The most motivating thing you can do as a follower of Jesus is to focus on Jesus. The author of Hebrews says in verse 2, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And the joy set before him is set before you too. The joy of seeing Jesus in heaven, the joy of being in his presence, the joy of having all the sin, all the tears, all the disease, all the grief and pain gone in resurrected perfection. That is the finish line. Focus on that, focus on Jesus there. And really that's what distinguishes this whole faith message from a self-improvement message, because the big idea is not try harder or run harder. It's trust Jesus. And the more you fix your eyes on Jesus, the easier it is to lay aside everything that so easily entangles. So let me ask you this as we wrap up this series. What is the next step in the race of faith for you? What's your next step? Some of you are in the grind it out phase of the race, those lonely middle miles. You feel overwhelmed right now with the demands of your family, or you're grinding it out at your job. You know what helps more than anything else in that phase? Finding running partners. Point 1, run encouraged. So your next step is reach out, join another small group as soon as this one is over, make that phone call to a friend as soon as you get home, maybe somebody you haven't spoken to in years, but they could be a support to you, or call the church, get a Stephen minister, or call the church and we'll put you on the prayer list, and hundreds of us will be cheering you on and praying for you. Run encouraged. Some of you are in the final kick, the sprint toward the finish line. The end of the race is in sight. You're exhausted, but the goal is right in front of you. How do you not stop now? Run light. As we age, things accumulate, all kinds of distractions. What do you need to lay aside? Lay aside those things that have accumulated. You may need to stop some activities that are distracting you, weighing you down. Now, some of you are at the starting line. You just started your faith journey. You're in the first few steps. I would encourage you to learn to run steady. Don't make the mistakes the beginner runners make. Don't go out too far, too fast, too strong. Get into daily training. Watch the daily devos every day. Get into another Bible study as soon as this one's over. Daily, slow, steady pace every day. And then finally, some of you are just thinking about entering the race. We've been studying faith for several weeks now, and maybe this whole time you've been thinking about it. I would encourage you, enter the race today. And the key is to run focused on Jesus. You know, Christians really are about Christ. It's in our name, even though there's a lot of people who call themselves Christians who will try to distract you with their hobby horse, their pet peeve, whatever thing they think is so important. Often it's something political. Don't let them distract you. That's not what it's about. It's about Jesus. So start the race and finish the race focused only on Him. I used to tell my kids, we are not, politicalians. We're not even Bibleians. We are Christians. That is what our faith is all about. Run focused on Him. Start the race. It is so worth it. Well, thank you so much for joining me during this series. My prayer for you is that at the end of your life, you will be able to say what the Apostle Paul said in the last thing he ever wrote in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. God bless you.